In the morning session, as you know, we focused on what makes a terrorist. Why do people get radicalized? Why do they become terrorists? And what has society done, or what can society do to make them better citizens, more useful citizens for us? This session is going to focus on what do they use to become what they are. A terrorist could be a very extremely bad person, but without weapons, he's as benign as you and me. But given the large proliferation of weapons all around the world, they become very deadly, and therefore, these are the things that we need to focus on. As legislators, it is our duty to ensure that we are able to not only nationally, but regionally and globally control this proliferation, be it light arms, small arms and light weapons, weapons of mass destruction, biological weapons, chemical weapons, you name it. Every kind of weapon is just as deadly as the other. And we need to focus step by step on each one of these and see what can we do to ensure that these weapons are kept away from those who should not be using them, be it state actors or non-state actors. The entire genocides that we talk about, frankly, are carried out because people have weapons that they should not be having or using. We've got a very interesting panel for you over here. But I think we would, me and my colleagues have agreed that let's start with the experts first, get their viewpoint, and then the parliamentarians will give their viewpoints and inputs based on that. So Mr. Mark Bromley, he's a co-director of Dual Use and Arms Control Program in Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. Why don't I hand over the mic to you, and we start from there.
Okay, thank you very much.
10 to 15 minutes, if I may restrict.
Yeah, just gavel me out if I go too far. Yeah. So yeah, thanks very much for having me. It's a great honor to be here and to participate in such an important event with parliamentarians who are interested on these very important issues. So I was asked to say a few words about what I would underline is one particular aspect of arms control. Arms control can have many different forms: controls on the production, on the sale, on the use, on the ownership of weapons. But I was asked specifically to focus on arms export controls, and specifically the standards that are in place to prevent the direct and indirect transfer of arms to non-state actors. Also, the prevention of transfers of arms to states that are likely to use them in violations of international humanitarian law. And then lastly, what parliamentarians can do to strengthen standards in this area. It's a lot to cover in 15 minutes, but I'm going to do my best. Unfortunately, it will entail some generalizations, which I apologize for. But hopefully, as I move towards the issue of what parliamentarians can do, I'll be able to be a bit more specific and give some concrete examples of what parliamentarians are doing and can do in this area. So just to give a bit of background, so the idea that there should be some kind of agreed international standards in the arms trade, and particularly there should be some kind of normative basis for states' export controls that extends beyond their own national economic or security interests, is something which really took hold during the Cold War, and then particularly during the 1990s, a period which obviously marked a bit of a high watermark in terms of multilateralism in many different areas. What was built then and extended afterwards is a network of regional and international instruments and standards that all states are required to uphold in this area. The key components of this are mainly that all states should have a system in place for controlling their arms exports, and that they should prevent certain exports from taking place. In particular, those that would violate a UN arms embargo, those that would exacerbate an internal armed conflict, that would enable a state to carry out a war of aggression, or that would likely to be used in violations of human rights. But two of the most important of these aspects, the ones that I was asked to focus on today, are that firstly, that states shouldn't supply arms, and particularly small arms, to non-state actors. And by that we mean rebel groups or criminals, or indeed any end user that's not authorized to receive arms by the state where they're based. And then secondly, that they shouldn't supply arms to states that are likely to use them in violations of international humanitarian law. So the laws of armed conflict, which include willful killing, torture or inhuman treatment, willfully causing great suffering, and so forth. The laws that govern how states should conduct themselves in situations of armed conflict. Now, while these kind of broad framework of the architecture is clear, it's fair to say that its foundations have also been quite shaky. In particular, the principle of not supplying arms to non-state actors does have the verbal support of the majority of the international community, but a small group, particularly the US, has always resisted its inclusion in the key international instruments in this area. And so for that reason, there's no ban on transfers of arms to non-state actors in the 2001 UN Programme of Action on Small Arms and Light Weapons, which was referenced earlier, or the 2013 Arms Trade Treaty. In addition, states often disagree about what exactly constitutes a transfer of arms to a non-state actor, and there's a number of states that voice support for the principle but ignore it in practice. With regards to IHL, the obligations here are more clear and well-defined. Under IHL, all states have an obligation to both respect and ensure respect for IHL. And this is widely viewed as requiring that all states take steps to assess whether their arms exports will be used in violations of international humanitarian law, regardless of what international instruments they've signed up to. At the same time, language on IHL is also included in most of the international instruments in the field of arms export controls, including the Arms Trade Treaty. At the same time, it's also important to underline that the standards that are set are incredibly high. Indeed, to the best of my knowledge, no state or individual has ever been prosecuted for aiding and abetting violations of IHL by supplying states with arms. And we can, if we want, get into the mechanics of why that's the case in the Q&A session. So while the foundations of this framework have been quite shaky, there's one thing that has been quite constant, and that's been the role of the EU, the European Union, and EU member states in establishing and promoting the key elements of this architecture. In particular, we have the 2005 EU Small Arms and Light Weapons Strategy, which commits EU member states to building international consensus on the principle that small arms should not be delivered to unauthorized non-state actors. We also have the 2008 EU Common Position on Arms Exports that requires member states to deny an arms export license if there is a clear risk that the exported equipment not will be used, but might be used in the commission of serious violations of IHL. So the EU's network of agreements also supports other elements of this framework, this architecture of arms export controls, but they also clearly support the principles on transfers of arms to non-state actors and on violations of IHL. But I think something quite significant is happening at the moment, and it's been going on for the last few years, and it's essentially calling into question the EU's ability to continue to be a leader in this field. And this is a result of the side effects of the two conflicts which we see in the world today that are exacerbating and exposing the weaknesses in the international security framework in general, while also creating levels of human suffering that I think are simply beyond the imagination of many of us sitting here today. And that's the conflicts in Syria and Yemen. And the conflicts in Syria and Yemen have at worst raised serious concern about the EU's ability to continue to champion and support these principles, and at best have exposed a significant lack of agreement among EU member states about what they mean in practice. So in Syria, we saw a number of EU member states that were keen to provide military equipment to non-governmental forces, while others sought to uphold the principle that no transfers of arms to non-state actors should take place. In 2013, the disagreement over this issue was so acute, France and the UK wanted to supply arms to the Syrian National Coalition, while other EU member states were opposed, that the EU arms embargo on Syria was allowed to lapse. Since then, the interest of EU member states in directly supplying armed groups in Syria has definitely waned, but we continue to see large transfers from states in EU member states in Central Europe to states in the Middle East who are known to be forwarding them to rebel groups in Syria, and little, if anything, being done to tackle these diversions. In Yemen, UN and NGO reports have repeatedly accused both the Saudi-led coalition and the Houthi forces of conduct that violates international humanitarian law. So in January, the UN panel of experts on Yemen accused the Saudi-led forces of failing to comply with IHL in at least 10 airstrikes that targeted houses, markets, factories, and a hospital. Partly in response, several EU member states, including the Netherlands and Germany, have suspended or restricted arms sales to Saudi Arabia, but others haven't. In particular, the UK government has issued licenses worth £4.6 billion for the export of military equipment to Saudi Arabia since the conflict began, and shows no interest in imposing any restrictions in the near future. I think the question right now for Europe, and indeed the wider world, is does it want to keep the current normative framework of arms export controls in place, or does it want to let it collapse and replace it with something different? To me, at least, it's unclear what an alternative framework would look like. We would go back to the days in which any state could carry out any arms export if it felt it was in its own national security or economic interests. So for me, I think the only option is to try and keep the current framework in place. And if that's the case, then parliamentarians have a central role to play. Indeed, parliamentarians have long had a huge ability to influence the way states both construct their arms export policies and how those policies are implemented. In particular, parliamentarians can reveal data. They can make these processes more transparent. Indeed, most of what we know today in the EU about states' arms exports is known because of the national annual reports which most governments in Europe produce on their arms exports. And the only reasons that these reports exist is because of the pressure that was exerted by national parliaments to gain more transparency in this area. And this process continues today. In 2012, the Netherlands, and in 2014, Germany, significantly increased the amount of data they publish on their arms exports as a direct result of parliamentary pressure. Parliamentarians can hold governments to account. Throughout Europe and in other parts of the world, national parliaments routinely scrutinize how states' arms export controls are applied by tabling questions and by holding hearings either in plenary or in committees. Until it was disbanded last year, one of the most effective of these systems was the Committee on Arms Export Controls in the UK. This was a cross-parliamentary committee which conducted annual, detailed investigations into the conduct of the UK's arms export policies, and which called for and achieved significant changes in UK government policy and practices. Thirdly, parliamentarians can put pressure on governments. The European Parliament has now adopted 2 resolutions in February 2016 and in September 2017 calling on the EU to impose an arms embargo on Saudi Arabia. Now, the European Parliament has no power in this area, and there is no obligation for EU member states to respond to this demand, but the act of making these calls is keeping the issue on the agenda and forcing governments to justify and defend their policies. And then lastly, parliamentarians can change legislation. In May 2011, the Swedish Parliament adopted a cross-party resolution calling on the Swedish government to make proposals on how to sharpen controls on exports to non-democratic states. This began a process which has led to the drafting of new legislation, which will come into force in 2018. This will mean that for the first time, a European state will have legislation that requires the democratic status of the recipient country to be a factor in determining whether arms exports should occur. So I will conclude there. I don't think it's a very positive picture that I've painted, but hopefully some of the examples of action that parliamentarians can take can provide some food for thought and discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. I'm sure there's a lot that you have with you that you have not even said as yet, but I hope during the open discussion all of that will come out. Well, we move on from there to Honorable Petri Sepaye, MP from the Central African Republic and Chair of a Foreign Affairs Committee, and also the Chair of the PGA National Group.
Je vous remercie. Tout d'abord, je voudrais remercier les autorités de la ville de Milan pour leur accueil. Et aussi remercier PGA de m'avoir donné cette opportunité pour parler du cas de mon pays, la République centrafricaine, montrer comment un pays peut basculer dans l'extrémisme violent et des atrocités de masse, même voire une situation de pré-génocide. Le contexte de la RCA est un pays enclavé qui est pris au piège d'une crise violente et récurrente depuis plusieurs décennies. C'est un pays qui est situé au cœur du continent africain. Il est grand comme la France plus la Belgique réunis. Et le pays compte très peu d'habitants, 4 500 000 habitants, et 70% sont des enfants, sont des jeunes de moins de 35 ans. C'est un pays, tout le monde le dit, potentiellement riche, encore intact, plus de 400 indices miniers, du pétrole non exploité. Mais la situation politique et sécuritaire du pays est fortement influencée par la dynamique des conflits dans la région, dans la sous-région, malgré plusieurs accords, conventions et traités signés et ratifiés par la République centrafricaine, dans le cadre de la prévention des conflits et dans le cadre de la paix. Je voudrais citer Boko Haram avec le Nord Cameroun et le Tchad, le Darfour, le conflit libyen, les tensions entre les deux Soudans, les affrontements interethniques au Sud-Soudan, les foyers de tension en RD Congo et au Congo, et la présence de la LRA de Joseph Kony, rebelle ougandais, depuis 2008. Les frontières de la RCA avec tous ces pays sont complètement ouvertes à toutes sortes de trafics, notamment des armes, des mercenaires et des ressources naturelles provenant d'exploitations illicites et contribuant à alimenter les conflits. La faillite de la gouvernance et la succession des coups d'État et rébellions, un des motifs de la situation de la RCA. Dans un contexte de pauvreté, la mauvaise gouvernance n'a fait qu'accentuer le cycle de fragilité dans lequel le pays est plongé depuis 4 décennies. Les coups d'État et les rébellions sont les moyens antidémocratiques, mais souvent privilégiés pour l'accession au pouvoir. La prise de pouvoir par la force s'est avérée de plus en plus violente et dévastatrice, aussi bien pour les capacités de l'État que celles de la population et de tous les secteurs productifs. La rareté des opportunités économiques a de fait transformé les jeunes en terreau fertile pour les chefs de guerre qui, en dépit des accords de paix signés et des engagements dans le processus du DDR, continuent de maintenir leur emprise sur 75% du territoire, c'est-à-dire 12 préfectures occupées par les groupes armés sur 16. Quels sont les signes avant-coureurs de l'extrémisme violent et des atrocités de masse en Centrafrique? Depuis décembre 2012, une coalition des rebelles, pour la plupart de confession musulmane, venus du Nord, majoritairement étrangers, des pays voisins, appelée Seleka, a fini par renverser le président en place le 24 mars 2013. Lui-même affaibli par 10 ans de mauvaise gouvernance, entraînant le pays dans l'instabilité. Précisons que ce président lui-même a accédé au pouvoir le 15 mars 2003 à la tête d'une rébellion baptisée les Libérateurs. À partir de décembre 2012, les milices dénommées, de 2013, les milices dénommées anti-Balaka, à leur tour composées majoritairement des jeunes animistes et chrétiens, affrontent les rebelles de la Seleka et c'est le début d'une guerre civile alors que le pays n'a jamais connu de problème religieux. La mission africaine MISCA, l'opération française Sangaris, la mission européenne EUFOR, ainsi que les casques bleus des Nations Unies n'ont pas réussi à arrêter les violences. Le pays n'ayant pas une armée, avec la crise, les Nations Unies ont décrété l'embargo sur les armes. La majorité du territoire actuellement occupé par les groupes armés qui massacrent les civils et font déplacer des populations. On compte 600 000 déplacés internes et 400 000 Centrafricains réfugiés dans les pays voisins. Les groupes armés sont dans une logique de prédation, souvent pour le contrôle et l'exploitation des gisements miniers, or et diamants, le vol de bétail, le contrôle des couloirs de transhumance. Leur stratégie de conquête des régions consiste à attaquer, brûler les villages et massacrer les populations. Par endroits, ces violences se transforment en massacres de masse comme entre communautés, à telle enseigne qu'on parle aujourd'hui de situations de pré-génocide ou de nettoyage ethnique dans certaines régions. Les groupes armés s'enracinent partout, utilisent la religion pour avoir l'adhésion des communautés, tuent les femmes, les enfants, brûlent les lieux saints, détruisent les infrastructures, même scolaires et sanitaires, tandis que le gouvernement élu, tout comme les partenaires, n'ont pas encore de solution pour ramener la paix. Mais quels sont les vecteurs potentiels de propagation de l'extrémisme violent et des atrocités de masse dans mon pays? Je voudrais d'abord préciser au plan purement conceptuel que l'extrémisme violent et la radicalisation s'enchaînent et vont souvent de pair. Il s'agit d'un positionnement politique, religieux ou socio-économique visant à l'exclusion de groupes présentés comme étrangers. Il s'agit d'un processus de socialisation vers la violence de plus en plus associée à l'islam ou à l'animisme, comme chez nous, anti-Balaka, et impliquant des jeunes, voire des enfants. De manière non exhaustive, nous pouvons retenir les vecteurs suivants dans le contexte de la RCA. L'instrumentalisation de la pauvreté, du sous-emploi et de la religion, la stigmatisation de l'étranger comme source de problèmes sociaux. La grande vulnérabilité de la jeunesse qui les prédispose à la manipulation, à l'instrumentalisation comme force motrice des conflits. Les faiblesses structurelles de l'État et son absence chronique fondant le sentiment d'abandon des populations. Certaines revendications, même légitimes, non prises en compte ou non traitées par l'État et créant un sentiment d'exclusion, de rejet, de méfiance. Les inégalités et disparités au sein de la population et des régions telles que les régions périphériques et frontalières abandonnées. Les violences d'État ciblant certaines communautés souvent minoritaires. La propagation de certains discours faisant l'apologie de la violence et du rejet des autres. L'habillage religieux des activités de prédation et de la criminalité. Quelle est la contribution du Parlement? Le Parlement ainsi que la population, lors du forum de réconciliation que j'ai moi-même présidé, organisé en 2015, rejette l'idée d'une amnistie prônée par certains médiateurs de ce conflit. Le Parlement suit avec beaucoup d'attention l'évolution de la mise en place de la Cour pénale spéciale. D'ailleurs, deux collègues, le collègue Gombamba ici, fait partie de la Haute Cour de justice. Le Parlement joue son rôle de contrôle. Auditionne de temps en temps le gouvernement pour pouvoir faire le suivi des réponses à donner à cette crise. Dernièrement, le secrétaire général des Nations Unies, Antonio Guterres, a passé 4 jours en Centrafrique. Il a amené une autre solution qui est celle d'augmenter le nombre des soldats de la paix. Et l'Union africaine, à son tour, a une feuille de route pour la paix et la réconciliation qu'elle est en train de mettre en œuvre. Voilà en gros ce que je peux vous dire sur l'exemple de la RCA. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Honorable Beatrice. Let me now move on to diplomat Tucapel Jimenez. From Chile, he's a member of the Human Rights and Indigenous Peoples Committee and chair of the PGA National Group.
Thank you. Gracias, muy buenas tardes a todos y a todas. Quiero comenzar saludando a todos los miembros de PGA y agradecer la invitación. Decir que para mí, y lo digo siempre, es un orgullo ser parte de PGA. Creo que contribuimos cada uno de nosotros con un granito de arena a este esfuerzo que hacemos todos y todos los días por vivir en una sociedad mejor, más justa, más equitativa, donde se respeten los derechos fundamentales de todos y todas, y lo principal, vivir en una sociedad en paz. Antes de viajar, averigüé en mi país, en Chile, y encontré, aunque suene un poco increíble, averiguando de las armas químicas y biológicas, que hasta hace pocos años Chile tuvo armas químicas. Por supuesto, fueron adquiridas en plena dictadura. Pero lo increíble es que estuvieron escondidas hasta el año aproximadamente 2008, cuando se descubrieron y fueron destruidas de forma inmediata. También hice un análisis con la juventud. Los jóvenes nacidos en democracia y en paz muchas veces consideran que no es necesario tanto trabajo para evitar este uso de armas, que se trata de valores con los que siempre vivimos, que son tan obvios que parece que no sea necesario trabajar por ellos. Pero todos quienes hemos vivido en dictadura, o peor aún, los que han vivido en guerra, saben perfectamente que estos valores son unos que siempre debemos estar defendiendo y que jamás debemos entender que no requieren nuestro esfuerzo. Y estar atentos, por supuesto, a defender la paz y la democracia de sus enemigos. Y claro, cuando pensamos en lo peligrosas que son estas armas en manos de extremistas violentos, y recordando el nombre de este panel, deteniendo la proliferación de armas convencionales y armas de destrucción masiva a extremistas violentos, podríamos agregar también lo peligroso que son estas armas también en manos de dictadores. La verdad es que los dictadores suelen ser los extremistas más violentos, porque a diferencia de los terroristas suelen tener mucho más poder bélico e incluso suelen disponer de todo un aparataje estatal. Ahora bien, uno de los caminos para avanzar en paz y en justicia global es claramente, y en eso podemos contribuir cada uno de nosotros que está acá, es lograr que cada vez más países ratifiquen e implementen las convenciones que tienen como meta el resguardo de la población del uso del aumento de destrucción masiva de químicas y biológicas. Esto es fundamental y yo creo que nosotros podemos contribuir de una forma muy importante en eso. Pero también yo creo que podemos fomentar la cultura y la educación de nuestros pueblos. Preocuparnos del crecimiento económico siempre es importante y todos los países viven preocupados de eso, pero muy pocos se preocupan del crecimiento humano y valórico. Y esto se hace, por supuesto, con educación, con cultura, y ese yo creo que también es el desafío que tenemos cada uno de los que representamos y tenemos cargos públicos. A razón de todo lo anterior, la pregunta es ¿qué hemos hecho en Chile? En Chile este año hemos realizado 2 talleres parlamentarios regionales, un taller parlamentario y un taller legislativo, sobre armas de destrucción masiva, químicas y biológicas, y se contó con la participación de representantes de 12 países provenientes del Caribe, Sudamérica y Centroamérica. Esto fue en el mes de mayo, ¿no es cierto?, que se realizó el taller parlamentario para promover la ratificación y la implementación de la Convención de Armas Biológicas y Toxínicas. Este proyecto, hoy día, después de todas las gestiones que me ha tocado realizar, porque no es fácil, pasan de ministerio en ministerio, logramos sacarlo ya en el Ministerio de Defensa y está en la Secretaría General de Gobierno, donde llegan todos los proyectos en Chile antes de ser enviado al Congreso. Por lo tanto, esperamos que a la brevedad este proyecto ya esté en el Congreso y podamos debatirlo y, por supuesto, se pueda aprobar también a la brevedad. Este taller fue organizado por PGA, que yo siempre, y lo repito y no me canso de repetirlo, son un pilar fundamental en los grandes avances que podemos tener en materia de paz y justicia global. El resultado de este encuentro fue que los parlamentarios que participaron señalaron el compromiso para concientizar a cada país, ¿no es cierto?, la importancia de estas materias y, por tanto, la importancia de incorporar estos compromisos en la legislación nacional. Por ejemplo, la resolución 1540, que es del año 2004, del Consejo de Seguridad de Naciones Unidas, la cual obliga a los Estados miembros a prevenir la proliferación de las armas de destrucción masiva en manos de grupos o actores no estatales. Y la resolución 2325 del 2016, que reconoce el rol de los parlamentarios en este proceso y que reitera las decisiones adoptadas y las exigencias anunciadas en la resolución 1540 del año 2004 y pone en relieve nuevamente la importancia de que todos los estados apliquen íntegra y efectivamente esta resolución. También en la necesidad de que más países ratifiquen e implementen todo esto, como por ejemplo la Convención sobre Armas Biológicas y Toxínicas. En el mes de septiembre también se desarrolló un segundo taller legislativo regional que contó con la presencia del embajador Ahmed Usunku, que es director general de la OPAC, Organización para la Provisión de las Armas Químicas, y ahí hubo representantes de 11 países también. Este taller fue organizado por la propia OPAC, como por la DGM, que es la Dirección General del Movimiento Nacional de nuestro país, que es la autoridad nacional y el organismo asesor del Ministerio de Defensa Nacional en relación con estos tratados. En ese contexto se conmemoró también los 20 años de entrada en vigor de la Convención de Armas Químicas y de la fundación de la OPAC. Fue una importante instancia en la cual se posibilitó el compartir experiencia entre los países de la región sobre mecanismos legislativos para lograr la implementación de la Convención de Armas Químicas. Tal es el caso, por ejemplo, de Argentina, uno de los países de la región que tiene en su legislación interna una ley de implementación de la Convención sobre la prohibición del desarrollo, la producción, el almacenamiento y el empleo de armas químicas y sobre su destrucción. Algunos países de la región poseen aquella ley, otros no. En el caso de Chile, y tal como lo dijo el director general de la OPC, Chile está en proceso de aprobar un proyecto de ley que es muy importante, especialmente de cara a las emergentes amenazas del terrorismo químico, que bajo nuestro punto de vista ningún país está inmune. Tenemos que prepararnos para contrarrestar esta amenaza y para hacerlo tenemos que tener leyes, tenemos que hacerlas cumplir. También uno de los desafíos a lograr es el avance en la ratificación e implementación del Tratado sobre Comercio de Armas de las Naciones Unidas. Este proyecto ya nosotros lo aprobamos en la Cámara de Diputados de Chile y está hoy día en el Senado, en la Comisión de Hacienda, y esperamos que se apruebe, se discuta, se apruebe lo antes posible. Actualmente 53 países lo han ratificado. Este tratado tiene por objetivo establecer normas para regular o mejorar la regulación del comercio internacional de armas convencionales, prevenir y eliminar el tráfico ilícito de estas y prevenir su desvío. Sabemos que hoy el terrorismo es un nuevo enemigo. A él no debemos declararle la guerra, creo yo, porque ello supone una contradicción. Pues no podemos considerar que los grupos terroristas deban tener la calidad de estados, que son aquellos que sí se les puede declarar guerra y a los que se les podría, ¿no es cierto?, declarar la guerra propiamente tal. Pero ¿cómo se enfrenta ese enemigo que muchas veces no tiene cara visible y sí usa armas químicas o biológicas? No es fácil, ¿verdad? Esto sin duda nos debe causar temor y obligarnos a trabajar arduamente y cada día en ello. Y creo que vamos por el camino correcto, lento pero correcto. Y ese no es otro que la destrucción de todas las armas químicas y biológicas y luchar porque no puedan ser jamás vueltas a producir. Y entender, como bien lo hemos hecho nosotros, que su uso constituye por sí mismo un crimen de guerra, tal como lo establece el Estatuto de Roma. Grupos y actores no estatales como el Estado Islámico o Boko Haram han tomado medidas para desarrollar, manufacturar y utilizar armas de destrucción masiva. La facilidad del uso de las armas químicas necesariamente nos lleva a meditar en cómo el derecho democrático puede enfrentar estos ataques. Ya parece difícil enfrentar el terrorismo tradicional, si es que me permiten usar la palabra tradicional, para referirnos, ¿no es cierto?, al terrorismo. Porque la verdad, estamos en la hora, es que si algo caracteriza es que sus ataques pueden ser de distinta forma cada vez. Por ejemplo, ya no es una sorpresa que un terrorista conduzca, ¿no es cierto?, un automóvil y atropella a decenas de personas. En Chile, afortunadamente, vamos a saltar esto por el tema de tiempo, las herramientas y las soluciones obviamente no las tengo yo solo. Tal vez ninguno de nosotros individualmente. Pero sí creo y estoy convencido y tengo la sincera esperanza que todos juntos sí podemos contribuir a tener un país más en paz. Yo creo que todos podemos tener diferencias ideológicas y las tenemos, de hecho las tenemos, pero donde no podemos tener diferencias es en la defensa de los derechos humanos y en la defensa, ¿no es cierto?, por vivir en una sociedad más justa y más en paz. Y en eso creo que PGA cumple un rol fundamental, presidente. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Now, lastly, in this section of the program, I have Honorable Taifu Lemi Taifu, MP from Samoa, and he's also the Associate Government Minister in the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment and a PGA member.
Greetings from the Pacific. English is my third language, so I want you to keep your eyes on the screen. My presentation will be done mostly from the screen, and I will provide the vocal support. There was this workshop in Samoa by PGA, 2008. There is the plan of action. It talks about the roles of parliamentarians. A number of Pacific Island countries came to that meeting. And there were some learnings, lessons learned from there. As elected representative, they have a unique individual legitimacy and credibility. We're talking about members of parliament, upholding the principle of good governance, holding the executive branch accountable, to have a greater role in regional cooperation, unity and development, the advocate for executive support for important international treaties and give effect to these treaties in domestic laws. Example in this case, and my presentation will be ATT and BWC, Arms Trade Treaty and Biological Weapon Convention. They are at the core of every properly functioning democratic system. They're very powerful, this parliamentarian. I became a member of PGA in May 2016, about 16 months ago. And I was asked by our PGA office, the Peace and Democracy Program, to have a look at BWC and ATT. I had no idea what they were at the time. My background is in finance, so I had to find out. I discussed with the Prime Minister, who is the Minister of Foreign Affairs at the time, and also wrote to him to formalize what we talked about. Immediately, a review of the whole process, a whole system, an assessment of the compliance was started. Mostly these are cross-cutting issues. They cover ministries and go across sectors within the government. It involves consultations and with the relevant private sectors, organizations, and NGOs. From then on, I never let go. I stayed with development, I follow up, and I remind them to make sure that they're working on my request. I find and I learned that the more I involve and the more I follow up, the less popular I become. This is a member of parliament, an ordinary member of parliament, asking questions at the executive. Fortunately for me, as been introduced this afternoon, I'm the Associate Minister for the Environment and Natural Resources. So from there, whenever I asked my own ministry, the response was always prompt. There are issues and challenges that I observe. The red tape, lengthy processes, and they go across ministries, across sectors. There is also a question of national priorities or lack of priority, the relevancy of those treaties and convention, and then the agency. BWC is a 45-year-old convention, 1972. No central implementing agency. AMFET was like a coordinating agencies. This is executive power, executive responsibility. It remains within executive. From a member of parliament, we don't know what's going on until you find out when you go to meetings like this. So we are only informed as member of parliament further down the line when the bill for national implementation is tabled. And therefore, the important role that PGA and other parliamentarian organizations play in informing us of the latest development in different areas. So by the 16th last year, by November last year, we had a document put together. On the 17th, on January 19, 2017, we had to pass them around from ministry to ministry to finalize them. There were queries from the Attorney General, has to be responded to, addressed. And in April, we had to prepare this cabinet submission. This is my ministry. Submission ready in May, and in June, we submitted that to cabinet. It was approved, and the document, the instrument for accession was prepared by AMFED on July. Samoa exited the PWC during the UN General Assembly in September this year, the 23rd September. From this meeting, I'm heading to Geneva, to the meeting of state parties for the PWC, to make a brief presentation like this. So in terms of background, PWC was signed on the 10th April 72 and became effective in March 75. Those are the locations or the depository states. Since 21st September 2017, it has 179 state parties, Samoa being the latest. There are 6 remaining signatories, countries that have signed from the beginning that have yet to rectify. Non-state parties, there's 11 of them. 4 from the Pacific. Niue is in the Pacific, is in the process of accession. Federated State of Micronesia, Kiribati, and Tuvalu are starting that process, same process. Because I was also asked to look at ATT, I found out that Samoa has already signed. This is a very recent treaty and became effective in 2014. There's 92 parties, 41 signatories, and in the Pacific, there's only 2 that have become state parties. ATT, the ratification, the implementation workshop, there was a workshop last year, September, in Samoa. I also attended the MENA regional workshop of Middle East and North Africa in Amman, Jordan, December last year, on ratification and implementation of ATT. Samoa is implementing ATT with the Conventional Arms Bill 2017 into its 3rd reading in December 2017. So Samoa signed ATT exactly 12 months after it was open for signature. It was one of 8 countries that signed to mark the first anniversaries. And there we have a picture of when the presentation of the instrument of ratification was handed over. In terms of the Pacific, there were a number of workshops. That same workshop that I was talking about in Samoa on ATT, September last year. It was supported by New Zealand and Australia and our UNOTA and UNRCPD, Asia and Pacific. There were 25 participants from around the Pacific region. And it was first of its kind to be hosted in the Pacific countries. A lot of workshops have taken place in the Pacific to promote ATT. And despite of that, a number of countries have yet to sign. At the regional level in the Pacific, I've attended the PWC Universalization Workshop in Fiji, July 2017. And I said in that workshop the importance of getting the right people involved. FSM, that haven't signed, did not attend. Kiribati sent a police commissioner. Tuvalu sent a lawyer from the Attorney General's office. Niue sent a lawyer from the Crown Law Office. Samoa sent an associate minister. And guess who was more effective? I also attended a COPAC workshop in Niue in the following month, August 2017, and I met the Deputy Prime Minister, Honorable Pili Talangi, and Minister of Environment, Honorable Halting, to promote PWC and ATT. Last month, I attended a UN Secretariat Summit in Asia Pacific in Thailand, and also met other Pacific leaders, and again, shared the same stories. So of the region, there are 4 that haven't signed the PWC, and only 2 have signed ATT. At the regional perspective, Biological Weapon Convention has little to do with the Pacific. This is what I keep saying to the Pacific. These are small island states that have no problems with these conventions. Geographical isolation, the lack of resources, capacity, etc., must be addressed for small island and isolated countries of the Pacific. And the Pacific Island countries are among the most vulnerable to climate change. And we need to put our priority right, play the politics right. The 4 non-state parties within the Pacific, I know they support PWC. We just have to provide them with the necessary support. And our institutional support unit from PWC will have to make their presence more prominent in the Pacific. My message to the signatories of the remaining signatories, 6 of them and 11 non-state parties, your continuing delay in accession and ratification is sending out mixed messages to the world that people are engaged in activities that contravene PWC, that there is steel development, production, and stockpiling, and that there is support for and endorsement of activities of radical terrorist states and organizations. And despite of that, of all our efforts, the threat of biological weapon remain. And we need to keep the discussion going. And we need to become responsible member of the UN. In conclusions, the universalization of PWC, we need to continue to reach out. We need to stop the proliferation of weapons, instead proliferate peace and security. We need to stop mobilizing weapons of mass destruction, instead mobilize leaders of mass influence. Leaders that Kofi Annan was referring to when he said, above all else, we need a reaffirmation of political commitment at the highest level to reducing the dangers that arise from weapons of mass destruction and from further proliferation. Biological process, the very process that brought about our existence, is being used to bring about extinction. The world needs to unite in the fight against biological weapons. Samoa's journey and my journey as a PTA member will not stop. The success of any convention is at the implementation level, at the national level. Like ATT, the journey will continue beyond accession until PWC is fully implemented in Samoa. We owe it to the world, to humanity, to the 178 other state parties, to the 6 signatories that haven't yet ratified, and to the 11 non-state parties. We owe it to ourselves.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.